Well, we're less than 5 miles from downtown, and you can kind of get a sense of the expanse of the forest from here. One of the questions I ask the trail doctors is, just in the 2 or 3 years I've been coming to this spot, I've noticed a great deal of erosion down in here. And what do we do to stabilize it? And they basically said about the only thing you can do is close it off, and the best way to do that is to build a platform. So we've been thinking about building kind of an observation platform that would get you above the canopy so you could see the skyline.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can do that, we have a trailhead here, we have a trailhead at the park, or at the golf course where you have amenities and facilities for hikers. And we'd be able to create probably a 5 or 6 mile trail. If this becomes an isolated trail, it'll be about maybe a half mile hike. Here's the Larry Johnson Recreation Center and helped build this trail, and there are pictures of Kendra building the trail, actually helping put some of this bridge in. And unfortunately she was hit by a car and died, so they named it Kendra's Bridge, and there's the new trail sign has her picture and her working on the trail. Kids that actually worked on the original trail. And that's Margie Taylor, who's on our board and also affiliated with the Larry Johnson Center. But there's a couple of down trees back here. I'd love to see us cut some benches. And instead of my reading to the kids at the center, we'd bring them back here, and scouts would be able to use this. So kids just don't go into the woods anymore. And there's a book called The Last Child in the Woods that she recommended that I get. She says it deals with that issue and the social impact that it's having on this generation of kids. And you can see it with these kids here. I mean, they entirely change their face changes and their whole demeanor changes when they walk into these woods from coming. And you see them coming down the street and they're all jumping and running and grabbing each other, and they come in here and they immediately kind of calm down and they smile and they take your hand and they pull you down the trail. So it's hopefully if you come back here next fall, we'll have a trail cut back to that wetlands area, and we will have some trail amenities here at the trailhead because we are applying for an AmeriCorps grant. Actually, it's a National Conservation Corps grant, and they send AmeriCorps teams out to help us with trail building or anything else that we want to do. But the Buckeye Trail begins here, and the rest could care less. So again, if you're going to turn the forest into something that's recreational and inviting, you have to make the gateway inviting and less threatening than it is right now. So.
Yeah, barbed wire doesn't help.
No, and the cyclone. I've just never been a fan of cyclone fences. I don't think cyclone fences say stay.
This is the Buckeye Trail.
Yes, this is the Buckeye Trail. The Buckeyes are way in the back. National parks, or at least any well-used trail system, your signage will give you destinations. This is the Buckeye Trail, but what does that mean? Well, there's a Buckeye Grove, and we should know that it's 2 miles to the Buckeye Grove. We should know that this is a 3-mile loop trail, so that you can say, all right, it's 3 miles, I can do that in about an hour and a half, etc. There's also an offshoot of this trail that goes to the Trinity River, so there should be a sign that says Trinity River Overlook, because people that hike, especially day hikers, want a destination.
So what?
So what? Oh, you want me to talk about this? This is the preface to the Groundwork Dallas office at the trailhead to the Buckeye Trail in the Bonton neighborhood. So Scott is kind of presupposing that something's actually going to happen here, and we hope it does. So.
And what is it that you would like to happen here?
We'd like it to be the Groundwork Dallas office. And it's ideally situated because it's at the trailhead to the Buckeye Trail, and we could make a significant impact economically to the neighborhood and become the protectors of the trail at the same time. I don't think we picked that much dirt.
Look over here.
That's the trailhead.
A little bit less work over there. Access means building some trails. We're going to build them in a sensitive way. We're going to build them in a way that's sustainable so that they don't erode away. We're going to build them as soft surface nature trails until we get further down the road and work with the city where we might have some hard surface or even soft surface multi-purpose trails. But initially our focus is going to be on nature trails. Right now the access points to the forest are either very, very well hidden, or those access points aren't terribly attractive to the general public. And that's one of the things we have to tackle is making the access points both well known, easily accessible, and attractive. Just be careful of the barbed wire. Just to give you an idea of the potential here, and we can keep walking, but most of what you'll see going further is very similar to this. But at about 4 different points, and we'll have to come in and clear some of the overhanging branches, but you can see the downtown skyline right from about 3 or 4 points along this ridge trail. So hopefully what we'll do is we'll clean up the trail, make it a lot nicer to walk on, install some natural benches, and then give folks an opportunity to come up here and just view the downtown skyline. But this trail goes on. It passes through a couple of other kind of semi-meadow-like areas. So again, you've got the hardwood forest, you've got the ridge, you've got the views, and at some point in time we would hope to stimulate some additional native wildflowers and whatnot in the appropriate places along all these trails. Now this trail at this point has no name. I call it the Keeton Ridge Trail, but at some point when we clean it up, we'll have a naming contest. You'll see that the trails we're going to go on are what we call social trails. So obviously the neighborhood uses this part of the forest. They're not particularly well constructed trails in terms of sustainability, but they're there. Groundwork, this will be one of our trailheads. Whether we can do parking here or not remains to be seen, but at the very least what we'd like to do is help rebuild this little section so the neighborhood can really enjoy the recreational opportunities here. As we go down this trail, we're going to walk probably about 300 yards and we'll be at what is called the Comanche Storytelling Place, which the Comanche Nation has come in, worked with the city, worked with DART, and worked with the predecessor to Groundwork Dallas, which was the White Rock Heritage District, and confirmed and certified that this was a true Comanche site, both an encampment area because it had water, and then this storytelling place. The storytelling place is really kind of almost a natural amphitheater, somewhat shallow now and somewhat overgrown now, but it is pure white limestone, and at a full moon it is as bright as the moon itself. It is really very impressive. You'll see what they mean by social trail, because it's just the fastest way down this ridge, and it is going to do nothing but encourage erosion. A well-planned trail would probably have swung around, come back. Also mentioned there's a trail that leads off in this direction. Actually, there was another entry point off that little playground that goes down this ridge that I've referred to, where you'd have multiple opportunities to be along the ridge and view the skyline downtown across the forest. So we're definitely going to develop that. One of the issues we're going to have to deal with is, in many cases, that ridge runs right up against that new home development we pointed out, and people are just throwing their trash over the fence. So we're going to have to do cleanup, we're going to have to do education, and we're going to have to do enforcement.
What's the issues with other lands that are on the periphery of the forest and development right now?
Well, I think that there's always a question in Dallas about the conflict between the interest in development and economic enhancement or advancement and protecting natural resources. And you'll see this all along the periphery of the forest, not just here, but other places where the tendency in Texas, not just Dallas, has been that the developer always wins. That it's very difficult to, apparently the state constitution in Texas gives personal property rights much higher precedence and value over eminent domain or the best interest of the city.
Are there a lot of pieces of property on the periphery of the forest that are in danger or that need to be conserved?
Yes, I think I can't exactly tell you what they are, but I think there are still pieces of the forest that are privately owned that the city is trying to buy back, and it would be in the city's best interest to do that. If you're going to do development, and I think some development is both positive for what we call the gateway communities, you need to do it in kind of what's it called? Not controlled growth, but sustainable growth. It's got to be smart growth. It's got to be the smart growth and smart development that enhances the natural amenities rather than destroys them. Because then you've got the protection of the natural amenities, but you also have attractions to the people in the communities that will make their land values go up and their property much more attractive for themselves and for those visiting. This is the Comanche storytelling place, and it is the typical native limestone of North Texas that at a full moon is as bright in the full moon as it is right now with the sun shining on it. The natural amphitheater is probably bigger when the Comanches were here because a lot of this foliage that has grown up, especially the cedars, aren't native and they've grown up since the area was used by the Comanches for storytelling and ceremonies and spiritual ceremonies and whatnot. The issue we're going to have to deal with is, do we leave it as it is and try to preserve it and prevent further erosion, or do we try to take some of this foliage that has grown up since the Comanches were here and restore it to maybe what it looked like when they were here? We wouldn't do that without consulting with their tribal leaders to make sure that they were comfortable with whatever happens. Now,
How did they verify that this was a spot?
they just got the Comanche chief to come out and kind of go through whatever archives and records they had, and he somehow verified it. I haven't seen any of the documentation, but it was a strong enough case that they got DART to change what they're doing with this particular site and somehow invoke some treaty that had been here a long time ago and said, "Youth shall not do this," because we'll walk down to where the DART light rail line is going to go, and we'll see we're right on the edge of this escarpment that basically does a semicircle. We were on the other side at the Cyene Overlook, and we've come all the way around to the other side of that semicircle. Okay, if you've ever been along, I think it's I-75 between Dallas and Kaufman, and you went through a part of the forest where you saw boats, there were just hundreds of thousands of boats. It was the boat graveyard, and there were literally thousands of boats that were just sitting in the forest, up in trees, down in the forest. And the precursor to Groundwork Dallas, which was the White Rock Heritage District, worked with the city to get the state to give us money to clean those up. And as of last March, I'd say 98% of those boats were taken out of there. It's an interesting story. Apparently some guy, and there are lakes here throughout the forest, 50 years ago or so, and I'm not sure of the exact date, but somebody started a small marina. And a lot of the boaters were bringing their boats in and storing them for the winter or whatever. And he just went out of business one day and left all the boats that were there in his yard. And then people said, "Oh, I think I'll bring my old boat here." And over time, more and more, the boats began to propagate. And all of a sudden we had thousands. And every time the forest flooded, those boats would just float everywhere. And it was horrible. But fortunately, they're gone. Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and young kids out here do go back to moonlight storytelling for them, to do other educational programs that both take advantage of the unique geography of this area and geology of this area, and also the unique native history that is here. That's the other thing that people don't understand is this forest has so much history behind it. Native American history with the Comanche Nation. This was a sacred area for them because they liked heights. High areas tended to be sacred to them, and there aren't very many higher areas, natural high areas in and around the Dallas-Fort Worth. This was part of their hunting grounds, as indicated by all those marker trees that we find throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth area, including the one we saw over at Keeton Park. The other thing is that virtually all of what we call the gateway communities were African American freedmen's towns. It's where the freed slaves went once they found out 2 years after everybody else that they were freed. So Joppy and the ideal neighborhood in Bonton, because they were the least desirable land, it was the least desirable land, it was available to them, and that's where they went. So they ended up in the floodplain, but they ended up having their own homes and their own businesses, and many of them have prospered. So there's both kind of American, Native American history, and there is also American history related to the Civil War, post-Civil War, and the African American slaves that were here. So it's a fascinating area. We also think that there's some old homesteads buried in the forest. If you go back there every once in a while, you'll come across a pit and you'll look at it and say, well, this doesn't make any sense. Why is there a pit here? And you look at it and there are really old timbers, and somebody says, well, it was probably an icebox. Somebody probably was farming the bottomlands and had a little homestead cabin here. Trails will include interpretive signage, both at the trailhead, and what we'll be using is a kiosk that was designed by one of the master naturalist classes a couple years ago that did the design and dedicated or donated that to the master naturalist. We're going to use that sign design, and we'll rely upon the master naturalist and some of the folks that know about the Comanche history to provide the signs themselves, the informational signs. And then at various interesting points along the trail, we'll have additional interpretive signage to enhance a person's walk.
Now, in all of these trails that you're telling us that you're going to do, do you actually have that in your plan? Are all of these like written in a trail plan, or this is just what the trail committee's meeting about?
The answer is yes and no. When we did the feasibility study and had to select, part of that feasibility study was to take, I think we took about 25 potential projects that Groundwork could undertake, and then we, through a scoring process, went through and picked the 10 highest priority projects that we were going to focus on in our first 3 years. And this trail, what we call the Cyene Overlook Trail now, actually there is one of those projects is called the Gateway Trail, and the park that we came through over near Grover Keeton Golf Course is called Gateway Park. That's why they call this the Gateway Trail. It really is 3 different trails. It's that Cyene Overlook Trail, it is the Comanche Storytelling Place Trail, and it is the Ridge Trail that will connect this place to the Cyene Overlook. So it's really 3 different trail components. So the answer is yes, there's a project plan for the Gateway Trail. The reason that is no is because that was a basic kind of design and concept plan. We now have to get in and flag the trails and really do the final design and destination, cleanup, engineering work that will go behind it before we can actually start building it. From there, the thought is that there's potential for far greater access to the forest with new trails. And that's what the Trail Committee will be doing primarily. It's creating an overall vision for recreational use of the Great Trinity Forest, identifying destination points, identifying resources for recreation like fishing, lakes, streams that you might be able to canoe on, just trying to find the most interesting destination points, and then putting a plan together that builds trails to those destination points.
Why should somebody be interested in donating money or volunteering time to the efforts of Groundwork Dallas?
Well, I think that the best answer to that, Scott, is it's in their own best interest. Anyone that is interested in the revitalization of Dallas, saving part of Dallas's history, encouraging economic development in areas of Dallas that have been ignored for years and years, that is the South Dallas or the South Dallas sector, they'd be interested in contributing to Groundwork Dallas, because our mission is to convert the Great Trinity Forest, one of the city's best and only natural resources, from being an eyesore, or at the very least a feature and a resource that is little known by the citizens of Dallas or those that visit us, to convert that into a real resource, encouraging ecotourism. As a result of ecotourism, encouraging economic development in what we call the gateway communities, encouraging nature educational programs for the students of the Dallas Independent School District, encouraging trips from local nature clubs, the Boy Scouts. We really want to see the forest used and seen as a resource that will stimulate development and growth and pride in the fact that it is a resource for Dallas, and encourage positive recreational and educational use of the forest. So if you're interested in conserving and improving a natural resource that could promote positive activities and behaviors for all Dallas' citizens and visitors, you'd be willing to help us do that and commit to that mission.
And don't you think, though, but when you say Dallas, that it's much more than Dallas?
I do, but I think we're going to start with, first of all, identifying it as to the citizens of Dallas as being a resource that is here, but certainly we'll be working with the Visitors and Convention Bureau, because we think that there will be a lot of outside visitors that when they come to Dallas are also interested in a natural resource like the Great Trinity Forest.
Okay. Anything else you want to say?
Probably much, but probably a great deal. Just that we're real excited about the mission of Groundwork Dallas. We're real excited to get started on implementing that mission, and we're real excited more than anything at seeing more and more people use the forest in a positive way. We think it's a special feature, a special entity for Dallas, and unfortunately, if it hasn't been ignored, it's been abused, and we really are looking forward to seeing hundreds and thousands of people using the forest positively, and having the forest be shed a very positive light on the city that we all live in.